Hello Copic friends, Michelle Houghton here. I am bringing to you a crafty comeback. We have a fun little elf from a stamp set that was done previously and is back here at the end of the month and just in time for the holidays. So we're going to color her up with Copics, and at the end you'll see the finished card that I create. So I'm gonna start pulling markers. I literally haven't pulled anything yet. So you will get to see me kind of play with that a little bit. And then we will get going. All right, so I think I am gonna do her dress and her hat with red and her little shoes. So I'm actually gonna start with that because those might give me a little bit of trouble. I'm gonna use my favorite group of reds. Well, I say that. Maybe I'll do something different today. Maybe I'll go for some E3s instead. I know sometimes I have to add a little bit of a different red in because these get pretty cool colored. So I might end up needing to add a little bit of a warmer red in with them. Sorry, pulling out of my bag and I'm having trouble seeing some of mine. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the darkest of the R3 series, which is an R39. And we'll go ahead, come in from the edges. And she's got a little sweater on over it, so we'll have to do something fun with the sweater. Little elfy boots. And her hat. She's got lots of tiny little details, so it's going to add a little challenge into this. R37. So I'll have to decide as I get in closer if I'm going to need to, I'm going to be able to cover up some of my little mistakes, or if I need to try to do a little bit of correcting. Sometimes with red that's not really an option. Obviously I could have picked something entirely different to color with. R35. I think I'm gonna finish with that one. I could go one step lighter. I think I'm just gonna finish with that one. Go back down and hit the boots. Let's see, I might be able to, yeah, those blend pretty well together, so I'm going to be able to hit this with the lighter and leave it at that. Some colors melt into each other or blend into each other really, really well. Some not so well. I think I'm going to use the same group of reds on the little Christmas ball. And what I've discovered is that several of my markers that I've used for a long time now have gotten really soft. The brush nibs have in particular. So they are losing a little bit of their spring, and I need to go back in and replace a lot of those so I have a little more control. Actually, I think I'm gonna leave that kind of brighter. Use a little bit of colorless blender to soften that edge. But yeah, okay. She's got two more over here, and we've got the stripes on there, but I think I'll come back and do that with a different color. I definitely need a green for her little jacket. So let's go with, I'm gonna go with a G0 series. So it stays pretty saturated, bright green. I'm not sure. What about, I wonder if this would. I am playing, if you can't tell. That would work. So I've got two G0s and a G4 just to get kind of that range that I'm really looking for. This is going to be her little sweater, and let's do her tights too. So G05. You could do the entire sweater. I'm gonna stay more like the areas that I think will probably be highlighted or lighter. It's just so small. And it's one of these things, sometimes you don't discover that until you get coloring and you realize, whoa, I don't have a lot of space to work with here. And then you have to kind of make some readjustments on how you do your coloring, how many layers you put down. If you go dark to light, light to dark. So I'm getting pretty much all of the white covered up at this point and coming into those little dips and crevices to darken those up. And then I've got this G46. And that's what I'm gonna finish with, and I'm gonna push that into some of those darkest spots. All right, underarm. Okay, so the series was G05, G09, and G46. I think that works pretty good. I didn't really need to do a lot of blending again because the areas are just so small, so I'm able to work pretty quickly. I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna hit a couple other things with this green. So I'm gonna come in and hit both of these little balls behind her. And because these are spheres, I'm trying to give them really round little highlight shapes. Kind of a circle near the top of each one. So I started with the G46. I'm coming back in with my G09. Now, I'm kind of playing, if you know the numbering system and how it works, obviously I'm breaking the rules a little bit here. I've gone from a number that ends in a 6, then lightning to a marker that ends in a 9, because there's such a saturation difference between the two. This is working, so I can still make that happen. Come back in again with a touch of that colorless blender. And don't worry, we'll get the stripes on both of those. Not as clear just because of where that highlight is sitting, but we'll see if we can't. That's a little bit better. Okay. But we'll add maybe some gold. On the tree itself, I'm thinking, might try a different series, but I might use, I was thinking blue greens, but this might be, it's not really what I was looking for. I struggle with this because I've run into this the other day as well, trying to find something that is really more that blue-green color that I want for a pine tree. So I think I'm gonna do this again. I might add some blue-green underneath my green, and I think I'm gonna do that. So this little tree is actually going to get a coating of BG72 to start, and it's gonna cover the whole tree. And then we'll do the shading on top of that. Because I know I'm gonna color over this entire thing, I don't necessarily need it really smooth. I'm just trying to get that under painting done, and that's gonna change the brightness of that green. The problem that I've had is that I don't necessarily just wanna gray it down. So using a more desaturated green, like one that starts with a higher number, it turns it gray, but what I'm aiming for is something that's more blue. So, and I forgot her little tights. I'm obviously not staying very focused today. Sorry, everybody. All right, so there's the blue-green. Then I think I'm gonna come back in with my darkest green, which is the G46. And we're gonna start adding in on top. I haven't totally decided yet if I want to have this have a little bit of texture. I mean, obviously we can't really see pine needles per se, so I don't necessarily need that, but do I want it to have a little bit of texture to it, or is it smooth? I haven't really decided yet, so I'm gonna kind of play around with that as well. Then our last little group here. All right, that actually is looking pretty good already. But what we're gonna do is kind of working further into that blue green, from that dark green into those kind of highlight or lighter, what are going to end up being lighter areas with the G09. And it's going to almost completely cover up that blue-green. It's also going to warm it up just a little more, which is going to be perfect. All right, just about there. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I've got the G05, and that one we can actually start in the highlight areas and just kind of flick into the darker areas. Sorry, small child screaming outside. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Not mine. Mine are not of that age. And if I want to brighten those up, I can show you that here in just a second, because I think I'm going to probably lighten a couple spots a little further. All right, so depending on how you're feeling about that, I think my concern with the lighter G was it was not quite the direction I wanted to go. So I'm going to come back in with my colorless blender, and I'm going to hit just a couple little spots, not a bunch, to maybe push that highlight a little bit brighter. As much as anything, it's just to make a difference. Kind of expand that light to dark value scale. Here we go. And right there. Awesome. So before I move on to a different little group of colors, I am going to come back and I'm going to hit her little tights. They're way too tiny to do shading on. If you'd like, go for it. I do crazy things like that, but I'm not going to do it this time. So the next little group I'm going to use is some gold. And so I have a color little unit that I use most of the time. So Y28. And then Y21 and Y00 are the three that I typically use to kind of brighten up little gold areas. And depending on how close they are to the highlight, then I will also use a little colorless blender. In this case, I don't know that you would see the highlight down on the stripes. And this is so tiny, the little top, that I'm going to skip that Y21 and go right to the Y00. Okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to hit these guys similarly. I'm pretty happy with how two of these turned out. I'm not sure about this third one. I really didn't put the highlight where I wanted it to be, so it's kind of a little bit mushy. I don't know if I can shift it. We might try here. So I'll have to do this in stages, and this might be a disaster. Won't be the first, won't be the last. But I am going to try to move that highlight so it's much more distinct. Let's see what's happening. Is it's blowing out this side of the, so I'm gonna stop there for a second. What I wanna do is try to correct it now. That's what I'm itching to do, but if I do that, it's only gonna make it worse. So I'm gonna let it sit. I'll push back at that, but then come back in and see if I can't make this look a little more like a highlight kind of shifted onto the front of the little ball ornament. All right, skin tones. We're gonna go really simple today. Really simple. I'm up for really simple today. Lighter skin tone. I'm gonna start with an E50. She's got such cute cheeks. We're gonna have to definitely highlight those. Cute little look on her face. A little confuddled by this tree. How to decorate it the best. Ears. Can't forget those on a little elf. All right. I'm going to use an E21 for a little bit of shading. All right. We don't have a lot of space on our arms, but we'll try to get a tiny bit. Not sure if I even colored that. Back with ear. I am making sure no one else forgets the ear and I'm forgetting it. And we definitely aren't done with those cheeks yet, but see if we're going to smooth a little bit of this out. The angle that we can see is an awkward one for cheeks and kind of creating that pink blush look, but we'll do our best. And I'm going to use an E93 right across the top of both cheeks. Maybe even a touch on her nose. Ah, grab the wrong marker, don't do that. All right. So let's see. Let's do a light brown on her hair. We're gonna actually base it or start with some yellow undertones. This is that Y21. And then I'm gonna add some E33. It'll get darker in closer to her neck because that hair is falling behind her. Again, we've got all these little things to avoid, so it's not making this easy. Still a fun stamp to color. I don't want to sound like that, but it does make it more of a challenge. I love these little stamps, but it definitely makes it more of a challenge. They're not just like this quick, easy, oh, let's just go color today. This will be a few seconds. Definitely takes longer. It makes me slow down. I think that's the best way to put it. I have to slow down and kind of think, because I don't want the little flicks on the hair to just start in the middle of the hair. It doesn't work. You have to be able to go right up against her arm and flick down and not go over her wrist. And that is not easy to do. In fact, I've got one in there. So I'm going to take that lighter skin tone and see if I can't kind of brush that away. All right, correcting time. This I'm sure is dry by now. See how I distracted us all? So I'm going to try to push at that green just a little bit, kind of tuck it back in, kind of push that back through the paper a little bit. I could put a tissue or Kleenex underneath and it would absorb it even better. And the paper that I'm working on will absorb it, but if I want to do even more, I could put something underneath it. So that, and then I'm going to use the lightest green. And I'm going to use the lightest yellow. And of course, what also happened is I lost my stripe and all of that. Sometimes correcting or trying to readjust makes a bigger mess. Just be aware. Decide if it's worth it before you start. All right, I have a couple little elements with the tree. And then I might add just some touches of shading onto all of her little trim pieces to kind of finish her off as well. So I've got a couple colors. Let's see, I'm going to grab an E31 for the little trunk and the little stand. And then E35, really quickly kind of up and down on that little trunk. And then I'm going to go through and hit the sides of the board. And then if you want, you could kind of add a really light wood grain on the little stand. You can soften that if you want. Going back with the E31. All right, so real quickly, I'm just gonna add a few little details on her, and then I'm going to turn the video off, but I'll add a picture at the end so you guys can see kind of the card that I come up with, adding her in. So I am gonna use a BV20 to kind of create some cast shadows and add some dimension, kind of shape to this, all of these little white pieces, because she's got all these little trims all over, and I really do want to leave them white, but at the same time, if I don't put anything on them, they end up looking unfinished. So we'll come in and add a few little details. Now, you're gonna say, now why are we doing this in blue violet? A couple reasons here. Blue violet works really, really well for cast shadows, and so I am gonna add a few little cast shadows. Her hat onto her forehead, her face onto her neck, arm, leg, can't see the other. Now when you get onto darker areas, you have to be careful because sometimes those are gonna, this BV20 is gonna bleach instead of create a cast shadow. So you have to be a little careful with that. The other reason I like it is then I come back with my colorless blender on the white areas, and if I hit the edge of that, I end up with this kind of beautiful blue separation from the violet as it kind of softens and blends with that clear alcohol solution, and I love that effect. It is really nice to me, more so. And so for a lot of white objects, you'll see me use a BV20 instead of a gray. I'm being careful. You kind of see me scrubbing this off to the side. Anytime I just barely touch those reds, I can pick up some of the red on my colorless blender, which is not a bad thing, but I don't want to smear it around. So I'm kind of watching as I get close to some of those red areas. I think the one thing I want to do though, is I am going to bring a BV23, one darker, to the interior of her little boots. And then I'm going to add that little bit darker on the tree. If you wanted to do one under her sweater, you could. I feel like that's almost a little overkill, so I don't think I'm going to do that. And I might do a little bit of the BV23 in the bottom around her neck so we can really see. There we go. Actually, I like that a lot. Okay, so cute little elf. I'm gonna put a really simple, like solid color type background behind her, floor, wall type thing, just to get her onto a surface. And then I'll trim this down and put her on a card. Thank you as always for joining me here at Copic in the craft room. Stop by the Kraftin Kimmie if you haven't yet and check out her crafty comeback for the month. And if you see anything else while you're there, obviously pick it up. She is a great gal. So thank you, Kim, for sharing all of your wonderful goodies with me. And thank you everybody for joining me at Copic in the craft room. If you've got any Copic questions, please ask below. I will see you again next week. Have a happy, colorful day.